In the 18th century, the British Royal Navy was the most powerful force on Earth. Yet, they faced an enemy they could not shoot, the wooden water barrel. A single advanced warship, like the HMS Thunderer, could lose 43 men to cholera in just 2 weeks. To the modern world, a crowded ship was simply a floating coffin. Now, look back 1,000 years earlier. Imagine 100 Vikings crammed onto an open wooden deck, no wider than a pickup truck, no surgeons, no toilets, no soap. For 3 weeks straight, these 100 Vikings breathe the same salt spray and sweat. They sleep in skin bags drenched in North Sea brine. By every law of biology, they should be dead. One infected hand, or one shared bucket of water, should have wiped out the entire crew in days. But they did not die. They conquered. While the advanced navies of history were being decimated by their own filth, these 100 Vikings were maintaining peak operational dominance across the Atlantic. How did they survive a biological nightmare that defeated entire empires? The secret was not medicine. It was a lethal system of survival woven into their very identity. To understand the Viking genius, we must first look at the failure of civilization. In the 12th century, during the Crusades, Europe launched its largest naval operations. These were massive transport ships, designed with enclosed decks to protect thousands of soldiers from the elements. But they accidentally created a paradise for pathogens. Below those sealed decks, there was no ventilation, human waste, spilled food, and stagnant seawater accumulated in deep, inaccessible bilges. These bilges became toxic cesspools, breeding Bilge Fever, a lethal form of sepsis that devastated crews. On these advanced ships, dysentery and typhus spread faster than any enemy army. Thousands of men survived bloody sieges and open battles, only to be claimed by disease below deck, before ever seeing the shore. Compare this to the Viking longship. It was open, exposed, and constantly leaking. While medieval Europe tried to seal their ships and ended up sealing their doom, the Vikings embraced a design that was continuously flushed by the ocean. One system allowed filth to accumulate and fester. The other ensured it vanished within hours. It was the difference between a stagnant swamp and a flowing river. The Viking longship was not just a masterpiece of speed, it was a biofortress. While 100 Vikings lived in such tight quarters, the ship's very construction fought against infection. It started with the timber. These hulls were saturated in thick layers of pine tar for waterproofing, but pine tar contains natural phenol compounds, powerful, primitive disinfectants. As the heat from 100 bodies met the damp sea air, the ship released a medicinal scent. This acted as a natural air filter, inhibiting the growth of bacteria within the wood itself. Then, there was the maximum discharge design, with a freeboard of only half a meter. The ocean was right there. Human waste never had a chance to sit or fester. It went overboard immediately. It was diluted by millions of cubic meters of moving saltwater within seconds. But the real secret was beneath their feet. The clinker-built hull was never perfectly watertight. It breathed. Seawater seeped in constantly, mixing with organic debris, before being bailed out daily by the crew. It was a constant, natural flush, unlike the stagnant, toxic bilges of Europe. A Viking ship was a self-cleaning organism that washed itself every single hour of the voyage. In the freezing darkness of the North Atlantic, Sleep was not a luxury. It was a battle for survival. With 100 Vikings packed into a space tighter than a prison cell, the danger of cross-contamination was extreme. How did they sleep without succumbing to hypothermia or spreading parasites? The answer was the hudfat, specialized sleeping bags made from animal skins. These skin bags were a masterpiece of survival engineering. Instead of lying directly on the damp, bacteria-ridden wooden deck, the hudfat created an individual biological barrier. By sealing themselves inside, they prevented the direct skin-to-skin contact that allowed lice and infections to jump from one man to another. These bags trapped body heat with incredible efficiency, protecting their immune systems from the bone-chilling cold. In a world of shared surfaces, the skin bag gave each Viking a private, sterile sanctuary. This ensured that a single sick man did not become a death sentence for all 100 on a long voyage. Water is usually your best friend, but for the Vikings, fresh water stored in wooden barrels was a silent killer. Within weeks, bacteria like E. coli would breed in the grain of the wood, turning a vital resource into a biological bomb. The Viking solution was a masterpiece of accidental pasteurization. Instead of water, they carried weak beer and a fermented sour milk known as skyr. Because the beer was boiled during brewing, it was naturally sterilized. The lactic acid in skyr acted as a powerful preservative, suppressing the lethal bacteria that thrived in dark barrels. But their greatest victory was over a disease that would later haunt the British Royal Navy: scurvy, the White Death. While thousands of 18th-century sailors died from vitamin deficiency, these 100 Vikings remained healthy. Their secret? A fuel system that included wild onions, dill, and dried fruits. They did not know what a vitamin was, but their cultural diet provided the vitamin C needed to keep their immune systems at peak performance. They chose taste. They got survival. The biological defense of 100 Vikings did not just happen at sea, it was maintained through a rigorous schedule of resets. The Old Norse word logardagar, the root of the modern word for Saturday, literally means washing day, every seventh day, without exception. The entire crew underwent a mandatory biological reset. They used cold seawater, sand, and wood ash to scrub away the accumulation of salt and bacteria from their skin. But the most critical tool for survival was not a sword, it was the bone comb. Archaeological graves are filled with them for a reason. Epidemic typhus, which killed millions in medieval armies, is spread through lice. By combing their hair and beards daily, these 100 Vikings physically removed parasites before they could lay eggs. This completely disrupted the entire reproductive cycle of the disease. Combined with a network of over 200 harbor sites for land-based sanitation, the Viking system ensured that no biological burden ever grew large enough to become an epidemic. How did a crew of 100 Vikings maintain such high standards with no police or written laws? The answer was a social operating system powered by something more potent than a fine shame. On a longship, your reputation was your survival currency. When 100 men live in a space tighter than a prison cell, personal neglect is not a private failure, it is a collective threat. In this environment, compliance was not enforced by a bureaucracy, but by the 99 men sitting next to you. A man who refused to comb his hair or wash his gear was a biological liability, a breeding ground for typhus that could kill the entire crew. Peer accountability created a distributed defense network. One man's discipline protected the group, while one man's neglect endangered everyone. This was not just hygiene, it was a lethal social contract that turned a mob of raiders into a sterile, precision-engineered unit of survival. The story of these 100 Vikings reveals a profound truth. Technology fails, but culture endures. While medieval Europe built cathedrals and universities, they left hygiene to individual chance. This led to the catastrophic loss of 50 million lives during the Black Death. The Vikings, however, embedded survival into their daily rituals. They did not need germ theory to understand that cleanliness was readiness. Their biofortress was a masterpiece of systems thinking, where the ship, the food, and the social pressure worked together as a single, lethal defense network. Next time you wash your hands, remember the Norseman kneeling by a wooden basin 1,000 years ago? He did not just wash his face, he kept a civilization alive through the quiet power of habit. Because in the end, survival is not just about what you carry, it is about the culture you live.